All righty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Filthy Games Room at 3479 Newtown Boulevard in St. Charles, Missouri, and by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in. It is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, and it was still a very warm day outside. So one of these days, fall will start hitting us. But I'm the maestro, Jeremy Carpin. Alongside me this evening, he is the senior referee of multiple promotions in the Missouri and Illinois area, refereeing over 350 matches. And as he always says, the referees are the men who hold and women who hold the most title belts. Ladies and gentlemen, from Issues with Wrestling, the man himself, Mr. Christopher Miles.
Oh, Maestro, what an introduction. I can't say that I've ever been introduced better. Ben Simon, Googs, Chris Rodell. No one's done that like you, so thank you.
Thank you, my friend, for joining me this evening. Our love goes out to Babs. I know work caught up with her. And also, folks, we're expecting Ray King on this evening. He will be on a future date. He had contacted us due to scheduling issues. But yes, Ray King will be on Roundabout Sports in a future date. I don't want you all to think that he's never going to be on. Don't worry. And next week, we will have the great Joe Pott on the show. So I'm excited. I saw him at the Hall of Fame ceremony just a couple weeks ago. So I'm excited for that. So, folks, be sure to follow us on Facebook, on X, and on the official YouTube channel for Interstate 70 Sports Media. And also, we're going to definitely talk about issues with wrestling during the course of the evening. But there is something, and I know, Chris, you heard about this. This is, we talk about, blurring the lines between reality and storyline.
Yes.
Now, this weekend there was a lot of amazing events that took place in the pro wrestling world. Some of them in our very own backyard, if you will. We took part in a great one with Grandel Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Epic. Meanwhile, CHWA, the Cottage Hills Wrestling Alliance, had a show of their own, or 2-day show, if you will. Mm-hmm. And during the course of that show, Parasite, Tyler Knight, known to many, ended up being let go by CHWA following an incident at the event. Now, I had heard from multiple people what had happened, and from what I heard, he had struck a kid member in the stands. Is that correct?
I don't know. All I heard was he got in an altercation with a fan. I wash my hands of any of that. I don't know. I don't follow what goes on there. So we were busy having our own show. I don't know what happened.
That's true. We were down at Pops in Sauget, Illinois, during the course of this when that incident had taken place. I had wondered all weekend, is it something that's storyline related? Is it something that, is just what they do, And when I found out what had happened, I had heard it from multiple people that, yes, it was a kid that was struck in the crowd. Whatever the background of that is, whatever the case may be, and it is what it is. Kudos to the CHWA management for taking quick action about that. I'm sure we'll be hearing more details as time goes on. Now on our end, like we said, we were out at Pops at Sauget. From Dusk Till Dawn 2 was the name of the event. What are your overall thoughts on that event? I mean, we saw an amazing main event between Kamara Jackson and Heath Slater, which was wild. But we saw a lot of great action that evening.
Yeah. I think we set the bar for the next year in St. Louis. Honestly, I think it was a great program, and it just shows that PWE, Grand Ole Wrestling, companies can work together. So, unlike it has been in the past.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up is that it was great because it wasn't just a one promotion show. We saw great action and entertainment from both Grand Ole Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Epic. I will say one match that absolutely, I mean, there was a lot of great matches that
Hmm.
stuck out to me. I think one of them was definitely Lennon Mephisto taking on Nick Natural
Hmm.
for the PWE Powerhouse Championship.
Hmm.
And look, you know as well as I do, this was more than just for a title. This was a very
Yeah,
personal battle.
intensely personal battle, and one side says they're done. Mephisto says it's over now, and Natural says it's not. So I mean, we'll see. But I mean, the ladies match. Missa Kate, Rachel Armstrong, uh, the tag team match, the Simply Rizness, the new guys. It's just all night. It was just. To quote Sheamus, banger after banger after banger, and I was really proud to be a part of that show.
One more thing I wanted to ask you about that show. I know you have a lot of involvement with PWE, of course,
Yeah.
and you were a producer for the event. I wanted to ask you, is there any word on Tyler Copeland's condition? We had found out he had gotten
Hmm.
injured during the match with Keith Smith Jr., who is now the new PWE heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
What's the latest on Tyler Copeland?
So it was a pretty severe concussion. And, the next PWE show is just a few weeks away. And he is not going to be cleared to compete in what I've always called, and, I think you agree with me here, is the indie version of the Elimination Chamber, the
Yes.
bittersweet lockdown. Two men start the match, four competitors handcuffed to the ring post outside the ring. Um, Intermittent times, a referee will unlock the handcuffs, that person enters the match, and the last man standing is the winner. Mr. Copeland was going to be a huge part of that match because you had Rhino involved, and TNA World Champion, ECW World Champion. He won belts in WWE as well, and you had you had Rhino, and then you had the creme de la creme of PWE, and of course Tyler was going to be there, but not, this isn't a business where you can compete with a concussion, so he unfortunately had to sit this one out.
Okay, and I know, our thoughts are with Tyler Copeland, especially, concussions are no joking matter. They are,
Yeah,
extremely serious. And whether you boo for him or you cheer for him, you never wish that type of harm
on
to
anyone,
come
yeah.
to him on anybody. With that, and I know, we'll be hearing more from you and Jared on issues with wrestling regarding all the latest happenings. So, but I
Yes.
just wanted to get a couple quick hits out there regarding what's been going on the past weekend.
Hmm.
Um, Now, speaking of injuries, I have to say, there is a lot. Look, we know the NFL is football is a brutal sport,
Hmm.
but the amount of injuries that has taken place over the past, we're just now heading into week 3. Like, and the plethora of injuries. I mean, Tua, for example, the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. You want to talk about concussions? At what point? This is about his third major concussion, I feel,
Yeah,
in the NFL. At what point do you actually say to yourself, maybe he should retire?
we can all say that, but it's up to him. And to let go of that, lifelong dream, to let go of that NFL dream is probably next to impossible. I mean, there's plenty of guys that held on too long and got CTE. Look at Junior Seau, and he ended his life because he found out what was going on in his brain.
Yeah.
And we know what trauma can be done with the NFL level of football or football in general. And I think Tua needs to really have a look and see what his quality of life is going to be like down the road.
And it's interesting you would say that because even head coach Mike McDaniel says, look, this is something where it's not Tua's not just going to go out and say no, he's not retiring, but
Yeah,
he's also not going to let the court of public opinion factor into his decision. And because there's always going to be weight with public opinion.
sure.
And say he decides not to retire, and he goes out there in a few weeks when he is cleared. The Dolphins just signed Tyler Huntley. Skylar Thompson's going to be the starting quarterback from until Tua is cleared, whenever that will be. But, and it's interesting because it comes from the hit that had happened. No, and this is not a blame game situation.
No, of course not.
I swear, like, folks, where I'm going with this is not me blaming it, but the irony of Tua leaning into a hit that from Damar Hamlin, who literally went into cardiac arrest on the football field just last year, is to me, or a couple of years ago, is just to me very, like, it really puts the whole life flashing before your eyes perspective. A guy who almost practically died on the field, ending up being involved in a tackle with a guy who is constantly running for his life out there and has suffered multiple concussions because of it.
So situations like that hit are the reason why the quarterback slide was even brought into the league. I don't know why he tried to lean into it for that extra yard. He could have easily slid. I don't know if it was a first down marker type of situation. I wasn't watching that game.
It was fourth down. It was a fourth down. He ended up getting the first down, and then he slides into it, or he makes the contact. So
yeah, and I mean, for all of the initiatives that the NFL has put forth, and to the credit they have, to try and increase player safety, it's still football. People might not like the XFL style of kickoff. I mean, that's one of the reasons I liked the XFL I think it does produce more, returns, and it does lessen the impact of obviously the hardest hit in the game from full bore running at each other from opposite sides of the field. But you could put every safety precaution you want out there. You could have them wearing the Guardian caps, which I think is a great idea. It's still football. It's still a risk. So I'm not shocked at the injuries this year because we get them every year. So maybe this time we're paying more attention.
So, and one interesting thing is, we talk, a lot of people talk about how you watch old videos of, 70s, 80s football, that smash mouth hardcore football, helmets go flying, players get suplexed. And, people look at it, but you realize, how the game has so evolved.
And you realize how many and again, all due respect to the players that are there, how many of those guys' brains are mush.
Yeah,
they're still with us.
Mike Webster was the first one diagnosed with CTE, and he played on all those Steelers Super Bowl teams back on the 70s, and he was a part of those of the Steelers for decades. And he died at 50 years old.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a naysayer, but the only way to have safe football is to either not play, because even flag football, that everybody took jokes about the NFL playing flag football, is still in some aspects a contact sport. You still might trip, you still might hit the ground, you might try and avoid the flag and get a knee to the face. There is no safe football.
No, and you bring up a great point, because look, I've played football in some way, shape, or form since I was probably 7 years old. Yeah. And, I'm 29 now, and I look at, my friends and I, we started playing flag football whenever we get together now, because one of our friends, dislocated his hip. And added with and one of our friends, had back surgery, and some of us had concussion. Like, it just got to the point where it's like, okay, why the hell are we trying to tackle each other? There's because you're not going to really, it's not going to be competitive anymore.
Yeah.
And like, I look at it now, but despite that, you mentioned how even in flag football, it's still football. That in my head, I still have that competitive nature in me to where it's a force of habit almost sometimes to lean down when like I'm somehow catch the ball. It's just how it's football. That's just how
Yeah.
it is, you know?
And this is why the average NFL career is what, 3 years, 4
About
years. I
3
think it's.
years.
You don't see
That
a whole
says a
lot of.
lot.
You don't see a lot of 20-year vets like you do in MLB, the NBA, and even the NHL. I mean, look at Ovi. Ovi's still out there playing at a high level, and he's been playing for how long? LeBron James plays
But
at a high
here's the
level.
thing. For now, you being a big hockey guy, I want to ask you this.
Hmm.
I'm the big football guru, you're the big hockey guru. Hockey is an extremely physical sport,
Hmm.
and people may this has been going on for decades, the discussion of which sport is more physical, football or
Hmm.
hockey. Well, here's my question to you. How is it in the NFL you have a lot less guys that play, let's just say 15 years. You have a lot
Okay,
less guys in the NFL that play 15 years than you do in the NHL
it's
that
simple.
play 15 years.
Okay, it's simple. An offensive lineman. How many plays that he's on the field is he making contact with his head? Every one of them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Again, I'll say Ovi, Alexander Ovechkin, anyone, any NHL player could realistically not get hit the entire game. There's not a factored in that you're gonna get hit. You know, Linebackers, running backs, and receivers too. And a quarterback, if you got a great offensive line, you might have a clean jersey all game. But every other offensive and every defensive player is going to make contact on almost every play. And that's the only sport that happens in.
Right. And meanwhile, hang on, I got a couple messages here. Nick, our loyal dear friend, we saw him this weekend. Flag football on steroids. LOL. Blues camp starts Thursday. We're going to talk about some NHL stuff coming up. I
See the
wanted to
bad
bring
see
this.
the bad thing is
Oh,
I'm already watching hockey before camp starts. I've been watching the damn prospect games. That's how hard up I am for hockey.
so it's interesting. Since 1960, this is since the merger. Um, you look at the quarterbacks that have been sacked the most.
Hmm.
Um, the one that been sacked the most, this is crazy. Fran Tarkenton
Hmm.
played from 61 to 78, 570 times.
Okay, but he was also a great quarterback. Okay, he had a great career. I point out, and I've done this before on the show, but when I've been on before, David Carr.
I
David
was just
Carr,
about to go to David Carr. He got sacked 76 times in one season
he
when he
broke
his first year.
yeah, he broke the single season sack record
Hmm.
3 consecutive seasons. So I mean, he could have been a great player, but the effects of football got to him
And I
because he
think
was
that's go
playing on
ahead.
a bad team. The expansion Texans were bad, and like every expansion team is normally in the NFL.
Well, and that's why I think when you look at expansion team quarterbacks like Tim Couch, like David Carr, people are more, I guess, generous would be the word because they're like, look, these teams have no offensive line.
They get a
The
longer leash, basically.
Yeah, they had a longer leash, they had more leeway because they were just getting their ass kicked by their own offensive line.
Hmm.
And look at in Tom Brady, look, it's great. Like for his whole career, he got sacked 565 times. The active leaders, Aaron Rodgers, 534. A lot of these guys are great quarterbacks that played a long time. Now I have the whole list. I'm gonna give you a quarterback that, I'm a fan of,
Hmm.
but he wasn't considered as great. He's not known for his successes. Okay, so we're gonna go with Vinny Testaverde, number one overall pick, played a
Hmm.
long time in the NFL. Um, he was sacked 417 times.
Hmm.
I mean, hell, Ryan Tannehill is sacked 415. Look at and I look at Nick's what Nick said. Remember Mark Bulger? Mark Bulger, once that O line with Orlando Pace and Adam Timmerman started, dying down, he started getting hit a lot. You know,
Look at the first year Rams, Chris Miller. How many times did he get absolutely obliterated?
and
You
Tony
know,
Banks running for his life, Chris
yeah.
Miller, like you said, like and it's not just the quarterback. I think one of my favorite stats in football, because
Hmm.
it's just so mind blowing to me. We hear all the time Barry Sanders, if he had played longer, he would have shattered the record.
Yeah,
For the
but but
but hang on, this is where it gets funny, and I think you and I are on the same page on this. Nobody had more rushes for negative yards
mhm,
than Barry Sanders because the Lions O line was so bad. Barry Sanders was constantly swallowed up in the backfield, or he was having to run misdirections for his life.
mhm,
And that once again showcases how much it took a toll on his body. And he said,
sure.
look, yeah, I'm in the prime of my career, but the hell with that. I still want a life after football.
Yeah,
I'm
I want
retiring.
to live after football,
Yeah,
and I think it's why you're seeing a lot of these guys that could still play even hanging it up. It's just like, hey, I've made my money. I'm gonna go home, and I don't blame them for that.
I think the perfect example, and I have friends that have blamed this guy, said he was very selfish, that have said it wasn't fair to the team. But I think the perfect example of a guy who could have, who, how do I say, he had those injuries
Mhm.
and was still in a great stage of his career, but said, screw it. Andrew Luck.
Exactly. I knew you were going there, and I
Yeah.
agree. You know, it's
No,
so easy, and again, the term just fits to play armchair quarterback and be like, oh, he should have played for his team. It's like, or you could not play for yourself. You know, it,
right.
he is a Andrew Luck has a family, and he was getting rocked out there. He said himself he felt the onset of a lack of mental clarity coming on. So he's like, yeah, I'm done before it gets too far.
He sensed the pressure too. Like even when the pressure
Yeah,
wasn't there, he just had that sense that, oh my God, someone's coming to hit me. Because it was at that point. And at that point, you're just like, yeah, I need to call it.
yeah.
Um, so and that's why I do like your point about the NHL. Yeah, I think on an impact level, you could say that the NHL is more
An
harder
NHL
because of the
check.
speed.
Yeah. I would say an NHL check is harder than an NFL tackle. There's
But
just
it's the
not many of them.
frequency level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these days, it doesn't happen as much as it used to because I loved the story. I was at the Hall of Fame ceremony, the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame ceremony a couple weeks ago, and Kelly Chase was being inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
And he told me, he told me and he told the people there that he was brought in and Tony Twist was brought in just to F people up, basically.
Yeah, and I honestly think that Ryan Reeves is probably the last heavyweight boxer of hockey. You're probably not going to see another guy that's sole purpose is to be just an enforcer.
Yeah, I think it's definitely at that stage. I want to transition now to the NHL more
Hmm.
specifically. And this is a question I've been meaning to ask you
Hmm.
for a while now because there was a time where it nobody thought it could happen. But now we're at the point where it could happen. So I'm going to ask you, do you think Alexander Ovechkin will pass Wayne Gretzky for the most goals all time?
If he stays healthy, yes.
He is
But by
41 short of tying.
yeah, by my logic, I think he has 2 to 3 seasons of playability left, where he's not just a charity case. So if he is a quarter of what he was in his prime, yeah, he could do it. I mean, you also got to factor in how much time did he lose to COVID shortened season, to lockouts. He might have already done it. You know,
Yeah, I was gonna say that's another thing because and this get yesterday. It's ironic. Yesterday, Ovi just turned 39.
Yeah. So he's
So
not exactly out of. He played there realistically 3 4 years. I think if he plays 2 3 and is healthy, he could do it.
which you've been a hockey fan a lot longer than I have. Sports
Hmm.
fan a lot longer than I have, and you know that when Wayne Gretzky retired, that was considered one of the holy grails of sports records, the most
Yeah.
goals. Nobody thought it would be broken.
No,
And
nobody did. But I'll tell you this: the most points, the most points record, that's never
yeah.
going away. I mean,
Ooh,
you take away all
yeah.
of Gretzky's goals, he's still the points leader.
That is true too. I do think if there's some records that like there are records in sports. People say no record is unbreakable. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
There are some like Cy Young 749 complete games. You are never going to see anything a
No, that's
fraction close to that
there's
anymore.
too much money in pitchers pitching for 25 years. Is it so they wouldn't let them do that? You're going to get yanked in the sixth every game for the rest of eternity. Um, but
Yeah.
with the whole hockey thing, I would it be funny to me is Gordie Howe did not like it really when Wayne broke the record. I don't know if you knew that or not, because
Ooh, really?
yeah, because he loved being that guy. He loved being Mr. Hockey. So when Wayne was approaching the record, he signed a 1-day contract with the Detroit Vipers of the IHL so that he could be the oldest player to ever play a professional game. A record that Wayne cannot break because I doubt Wayne's gonna lace them up for a minor league team when he's 63. But who knows?
uh, yeah, you just have to have some sort of record, that you can hold for your own. And this is the thing, though. Wayne Gretzky has something that only two other athletes in professional sports have. Their number retired by the whole league.
Yeah,
It's just
and
it's just Wayne Gretzky, Jackie Robinson, and Bill Russell. Like
unofficially Michael Jordan, even though the Lakers wear let LeBron wear 23. I mean, it's one of those. I, you know how I feel about league-wide retirements.
I
Outside of
do.
Jack, outside of Jackie Robinson, I
Jackie
think
Robinson's is completely
that's
understand. I
different.
get what you're
That's
saying.
different. That's not like that's putting Jackie Robinson on a different kind of throne, not like the best player ever thrown, but in important history
Right.
throne. Um, the Rangers. Yeah, I don't know if they would retire 99. He didn't have much of an impact there. He was just an attraction. I think the Oilers and the Kings could retire 99. The Blues, obviously not. It was a half a season. But league wide, it's like, yeah, you
Thanks,
show
Mike Keenan. Yeah.
yeah, show respect to the greatest player ever, but still, it's just like, okay. It would have been one of those things probably where nobody was gonna wear 99 again anyway. Like I doubt anyone's ever gonna wear 66, again.
Yeah.
So it's just unofficially, but like make it one of those things where it's like, eh. But to see Gretzky's number in the rafters in Ottawa just is weird to me.
I was gonna say, yeah, it is, and you know, I so we got Nick has some questions for us or for you actually. So
All right.
Pat Maroon is on the Chicago Blackhawks now. When he makes his return to
Yeah.
St. Louis, how do you think he's gonna be welcomed?
He'll get he'll get cheered. It's Pat Maroon.
I he goes, will
It's
he
the
be booed?
hometown
No, he's
hero.
gonna. I was gonna say it is literally Pat Maroon. That's like, look, I remember when my dad and I went to the Pittsburgh Pirates St. Louis Cardinals game at Busch when
Yeah.
David Freese was on the team. He got a huge ovation, lasted like
Hmm.
a minute or two. Like Molina stepped away from home plate, tipped the cap. Like it's those moments are etched in the city's history.
Yeah.
And it's more wonderful because he is the hometown kid doing that.
Yeah. It
So
that does not matter. Like I've been to a ton of Blues games, and yeah, the fans do boo the other team, but they don't boo players they respect. They don't. Even Gretzky didn't get booed when he came back with the Rangers, even though he left in unceremonious circumstances. I think the only person, not even a player, and you mentioned him earlier, that would ever get like raucous boos from everyone would be, good old Iron Mike Keenan if he ever showed his getting face around here again.
I was gonna say, when Kelly Chase mentioned him at the Hall of Fame ceremony too, he goes, "Everybody can agree that he's an asshole." And everyone's just shaking their heads like, "Yeah, I mean, pretty much." And that's true. Like, let's face it, Wayne Gretzky would have been there more than half a season if it wasn't for Mike
hmm
Keenan. That's the
Yeah,
funniest part of all of
you
this.
yeah
You
you
do
would have
not
had
have. How do you have a team with Brett Hall, Al McInnes, and Wayne Gretzky, and you do nothing?
your
Like,
Mike Keenan.
how? Any other coach, I feel like it would have been wonderful. Like,
Yeah.
God. Ooh, here we go. We got another question in. Thoughts on Dylan Holloway? Does he have a huge year, or does he have to have a huge year for the Blues to make the playoffs?
We were a bubble. They were a bubble team last year. They were knocking on the door up until the last week of the season. I think the addition of our nice offer sheet boys that really pissed off some of the Oilers, and I think they've made the right moves to be on the other side of the bubble. I think they're comfortably in this year, but they're in as a wild card too, but with some breathing room.
Okay. Now we're going to continue our NHL talk, but before we do, we're going to take a quick little break here so I can do some amazing plugs. And Chris, you're going to actually do a couple with me, or for your
Yes.
end. So first,
Yeah.
proud sponsor of Roundabout Sports is Filthy Games Room, located at 3479 Newtown Boulevard in St. Charles, Missouri. Filthy Games Room has the largest selection of retro and modern video games in the St. Louis metropolitan area, ranging all the way back from the Magnavox Odyssey to the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch era. They got a plethora of consoles, complete in box, sealed, and rarities that you can find. You can also try out their free to play arcade machines at the front entrance that are available every day when they're open. Their hours are 12 to 8 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday. Ben Bizzle is the man who's made his dream a reality there. That is Filthy Games Room, located at 3479 Newtown Boulevard. Now, as far as our dear friend Christopher Miles goes, I know we had a couple promo codes that you had at the beginning of the show. I
Yes.
want to talk about as far as um, if you
So
refresh.
W.GG is a wonderful energy powder, and they also have cans. So if you like the pre-workout powder, you get a shaker, you get the pre-workout powder in there, you shake it up, you drink it. Or if you like the canned stuff, they got that too. W.GG promo code IWW for 10% off your order, except for the rest of the month of September. Promo code IWW gets you 20% off your order. So get some of that stuff. It's great flavors. They've got, sour gummy worm. They've got green apple. They've got mango banana. They've got all these great flavors of energy drinks that I'm enjoying right now. W.GG promo code IWW. Check them out.
All right, and then we also got dmedfit.co.
deemed
Tell us about
deemed fit.
or deemed fit. Go
Yes.
for it.
Deemed fit.
Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about this.
So Deemed Fit is the one I'm especially excited to be involved with because those that don't know, outside of being a referee, I am a first responder in my real life. And Deemed Fit is an organization that sells clothing like these T-shirts and workout apparel to raise money to and raise awareness for mental health for first responders, for military, fire, police, EMS. Because let's face it, those are all stressful jobs. First responders don't get a lot of credit for the mental health anguish they go through. So Deemed Fit takes all of the money they make. They are a nonprofit company. All the money made from Deemed Fit apparel goes into mental health charities for first responders. And I'm proud to be a part of it. So it's deemedfit.co, promo code 123miles for 20% off your order. Get one of these great T-shirts. Get some great joggers. They've got hoodies, everything. I would wear it today. It was my favorite shirt, but it was dirty. It's the "Are You Okay" shirt, and it's just about breaking the stigma of mental health. Let's talk about it. Let's get worked out. Deemedfit.co, promo code 123miles.
Fantastic. I do want to mention, folks, to bounce off and continue from our dear friend Christopher Miles, talk about mental health. Here at Roundabout Sports, we always have the NAMI helpline at the end of the show, but we also do it now in the middle of our programming. You can call the NAMI helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle. And of course, September is Suicide Awareness Month, and we put at the bottom of the screen the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. 988 is the number to dial. Understand that the line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. Understand that you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody that loves you, that cares about you, wants nothing but the best for you. Um, and we all go through our struggles every day. I know I do, Chris. I know you do. Like all of our friends, families have had their times, and nobody should have to go through those struggles alone. You are just a phone call, a text message, the proper avenue away to where you can get that
Mhm.
help that you need. And you could be the listening ears and watch wide for somebody that you love and care about in need as well. So that's once again 18 or that is once again 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. With that, folks, we are back on Roundabout Sports. I'm the maestro Jeremy Carpa alongside referee, producer, amazing friend, and sports fanatic Christopher Miles. And this is episode 104. I wanted to ask you, what has been the latest with issues with wrestling?
So we usually drop on Thursdays, but this week, due to some outside issues, we'll be on Friday, and we're having a fun topic. We're talking about something that's been discussed a lot lately: blood in the wrestling industry. Where
Ooh,
what is the yeah? Is it necessary still? Especially with the commissions, some states don't have them, so there is no blood testing. We're going to talk about all of that, where it should be used, where it shouldn't be used, if it should be used at all. But and that's our topic this week. And like I said, Issues with Wrestling is not your typical wrestling podcast. We don't come on and I'm not knocking the shows that do, but we don't come on and we don't review Raw, SmackDown, or Dynamite. We might in passing mention that what we saw, but we pick a topic and we discuss that topic, and it is an issue with wrestling. You know, we've talked about the generational gap. We had myself being a millennial. We had the great Luke Roberts on representing Gen Z. I'm sorry, Gen X, and we had Jared, my co-host, representing Gen Z, talking about how different generations see wrestling. Talked about toxic fandom. We talked about where the legacy of certain wrestlers should lie. If they work for multiple companies, if they have won championships, like where should Chris Jericho be? Is he an AEW guy? Is he a WWE guy? We talked about that. We talked about the amazing world of wrestling action figure collecting with Ricky
oh yeah.
Rodriguez and Baracus. So we touched the third rail. We talked about politics and wrestling. That
I've
was a
been on
fun
it a
one. So
couple times as well. That was a very
yes.
interesting one.
So if you like your wrestling with a bit of a debate format where we talk about a
Mm,
subject, check us out. Issues with Wrestling right here on the I-70 Sports Media Podcast Network.
exactly. Wow, that's
Friday
fantastic.
this week.
So,
Friday this week.
yeah, I know. It says at the bottom that it airs every Thursday night, but yes, programming update. It will air on Friday this week.
Hmm.
I wanted to also ask this. So, in regards to pro wrestling, um, what are your thoughts on the possibility? AEW has this new media rights deal coming up with Warner Brothers Discovery. The latest
Hmm.
rumblings are that AEW Rampage will be canceled. What are your thoughts on
Uh, Good.
that?
They have that tertiary program. that WWE doesn't have, because NXT is not the C brand; it is the minor leagues. So if you cancel Rampage, you could easily, if you want to have that third show, if you want to have that, put a freaking ROH program out there. Because the fact that
Ooh,
ROH behind a paywall, I don't watch it, and I'm a wrestling fanatic.
yeah. I was gonna say that is one thing I wanted to ask because ever since ROH got acquired by AEW, even though it runs as
It's
its
meant
own,
nothing. It's meant
yeah,
nothing.
yeah. Like I remember when the announcement first happened, we're like, "Holy shit, AEW just got ROH? Okay, this is gonna be legit. Now we're really gonna have something," and nothing's come of it. It's just more title belts that have been shown on AEW programming.
That we need none of.
Yeah, I think we are at a point where it's. And I want to ask. This is the last wrestling question I got to ask you before we hit a couple more sports topics for the evening. Do you think? We hear this about AEW all the time, and I know us and Jared and Rodell and many others. We talk wrestling all the time.
Yes.
Do you find that people follow AEW now just to see self implosions?
No, I think there's a lot of people that watch AEW because they want that alternative, which is fine. I want you to have that. Um, I, I gotta be honest. If I'm going to skip a show, it's gonna be probably Dynamite or Collision. Because Collision, anyway, Saturdays I'm booked. Almost every
Right.
Saturday I have a show. So I skip that a lot. And Dynamite is just like, hey, I'll catch it when I catch it. It's not that I think, like, I feel that I almost have to watch Raw or SmackDown live. Now I don't always. I'll skip it and I'll watch later, but I feel less left out if I skip an AEW show. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I do get it because I feel like that's where I was at some point because I always used to make try and effort. And of course, with Roundabout Sports airing literally AEW Dynamite's literally going on right now, you know, it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like, oh crap. Like if I'm missing Raw or SmackDown, given the
Hmm.
circumstances of why, I'm like, oh damn, I missed Raw and Smack. I gotta, catch
Hmm.
up, see what I missed. AEW, I'm sorry. I'm not wishing them to go under because
No.
you have to cheer for wrestling. Like
Yes.
to me, you wish the best for the wrestling industry. But
And
I just don't have that urge to see it as much as I do Raw, SmackDown, and NXT.
there's weeks. I mean, I watch Impact too, and I have found Impact to be a far more enjoyable show than Dynamite. And for a lot of people, I know quite a few wrestling fans that just tuned out when they aired the Punk footage, because it's like we talked about this on IWW Nations Wrestling.
Yeah.
That really upset a lot of people. It's like, okay, everything that Punk said happened in that footage. So you're all excited because you got rid of your biggest draw, and look where they're all at now. They're all watching him on WWE again.
Yeah. There was no reason for um any of that.
No.
Um, so we're in transition now here on Roundabout Sports. There's something that just came out a little bit ago. Now you thought this was already a given. Now you have been around for plenty of sports relocations. Um,
Unfortunately.
you know, yeah, the Browns moving to Baltimore, the Rams constantly moving. Um, hell, the Thrashers moving, the Jets move. Yeah, I could go on forever. And one of the teams that is in the one that breaks my heart, the Hartford Whalers moving, but one that moved, and I remember this as a kid, and it was a huge controversy. There was so much
Hmm.
litigation and issues. The Seattle Supersonics moving to OKC.
Okay, so I researched this after we had a discussion earlier. I was incorrect, but I also wasn't totally incorrect. The Sonics name and colors were guaranteed to stay in Seattle, but
Yes,
not the team history. That was your point of
right.
contention, and you were right there. So the OKC Thunder own that history. Sean Kemp's legacy is with the OKC
The
Thunder.
title they won is with OKC. Now, see, when the
For
Cleveland
now.
Browns moved right, and when the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore, the city sued the NFL, and they won to where the history and the
Mhm.
colors and the logos and all that everything stayed with Cleveland, and they would
And
just be an expansion team while you build a new stadium.
you almost
You
had the same
know,
situation with the Coyotes. If Morello had not been a doofus and managed to get that stadium deal done, the legacy of the Coyotes would still be, it'd be like they restarted. But now it's a dead franchise again, and who knows if Winnipeg's gonna get their original history back.
yeah, that is a huge slap in the face for sure. And
But but
you
it- but this
know,
but this has happened in the NBA before, because when Charlotte, the original Hornets,
Charlotte,
moved to New Orleans, when they changed their name to the Pelicans, they gave the history of the Hornets to the then Bobcats, who became the Hornets again.
yeah.
So there is a precedent for this in the NBA. So
Right. And people were amazed that, New Orleans got an NBA team before Seattle got another one. And here's another example Nick has. The Hawks, when they moved from St. Louis to Atlanta. I mean, the Hawks history is with
mhm,
Atlanta. The Supersonics, they are one of, if not one of the well, they are one of the most iconic franchises in the NBA, just based off their colors, their player history. There was just an aura about
the
them.
name,
The
yeah,
name, the Supersonics. I mean, yeah, you got the Lakers, the Sun, but holy crap, you got the Supersonics. There was just something so
hmm
interesting about that, and you know, and yes, the seeds have always been there to try to bring them back,
hmm
but it was never officially planted. And now it's like, and you never heard from OKC, like from the officials at OKC, if they would ever give the history back, as far as the championships and the seasons and stuff.
hmm
Well, now this is the first time you've publicly heard, okay, if they do have a new NBA expansion team out in Seattle, then they can have the history and you guys just bring back the Supersonics. Like, here, I got a perfect example. Paul Tagliabue, the old commissioner of the NFL, he
hmm
retired. This was a rare precedent. He retired the name the Oilers. No matter what
hmm
happens, nobody will ever have the name Oilers again in the NFL because they were just so iconic to the city of Houston. Like,
hmm
um,
And you
so
look at the University of Houston, the NCAA team wore the colors of the Houston Oilers, and they got a cease and desist and said, "Screw off, we're doing it anyway." So,
yeah, I remember that they're like, you know what? Well, screw you guys. This is our city. You stole our team. We had to get a new one.
yeah.
So yeah. Last thing I have to bring up today. First off, I just want to say it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. As always, it has been a minute, but it is great. Definitely having you on.
Yeah.
So I, interestingly enough, just got this sent to me. And it's always funny when something like this happens. Um, it's a change.org petition. Now can
Oh
either
boy.
go these can either go comedically bad or interestingly good. And I think we have an interestingly good one. Once
All right, let's
again,
hear it.
you are a sports fan that for a long time, so you might know this. This one is about inducting Otis Anderson into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it was started by a gentleman named Jeff Gibson. And Jeff goes, "We, the undersigned, urge the Pro Football Hall of Fame to recognize Otis Anderson's outstanding achievement and contributions to the sport by inducting him into the Hall of Fame." So far, it has 19 signatures. It was started literally like not too long ago. I will say it was shared in the St. Louis Football Cardinals group that is run by Bob Underwood of the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. So I will be
The
sharing it
numbers
for
aren't
anybody that
there.
is
The numbers
for
aren't
anybody that's
there.
interesting or anybody that's interested. Um, but I really want this is an interesting one, all right, and I wanted to bring this up. So the case for Otis Anderson, he was the MVP of. Oh, let me go back. Hang on. All right, he was the MVP of Super Bowl 25. He had he had been eligible for 15 years and never received much of a sniff. He rushed for over 10,000 yards in 14 years, but I think a lot of people say the issue is that a lot of the teams he played for, as much as, and I hate saying this because I love St. Louis, were not very good. The football Cardinals teams that he did amazing with were very rough. And
And again, I
yeah,
said earlier, I would want to see a guy that contributed in St. Louis get him, but the numbers just aren't there. The career numbers aren't there. So yeah, it's gonna be a no for me, dog.
I will say, I had the pleasure of meeting him and seeing it. Now we're up to 20 signatures when he got inducted into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame, which is a well-deserved accomplishment
Mhm.
and recognition. I think there is a lot of other players. There are a lot of other players in the Hall of Fame that also deserve to be recognized, possibly before Otis Anderson.
Mhm.
In baseball, you have the 3,000 strikeout club. That almost all guarantees, unless you're a roid head or just a buffoon, um, a entry into the Hall of Fame. The 3,000 hit club, unless you are a buffoon, a steroid user, or whatever Pete Rose decided to do this week. Um,
See, and again, I'm the minority guy on that. I don't defend Pete Rose. He doesn't deserve Cooperstown. So come at me.
I,
I'm right.
yeah.
All the commenters
um,
come at me. Pete Rose
yep.
does not at all deserve it. Sit on the sideline for the rest of your
I'll
life,
never
and
forget
afterwards
our
you
episode with
bet
you, me,
on
and
baseball.
Sadie, and we had talked about this.
Yeah,
Sadie was on the show, and the three of us talked about it. And that was after he
yeah,
had made those comments about that one reporter or that incident that happened with a girl a long time ago. And that's a whole nother neither here nor
yeah.
there situation. But the 10,000-yard rushing club, there are quite a few running backs um, in the 10,000-yard rushing club that are not in the Hall of Fame. And I'm just going to name a few.
Mhm,
In fact, now the only two I'm going to say that I'm not counting in this scenario is Frank Gore, who's third overall with 16,000, and Adrian Peterson with 14,918 because they are recently retired. They're not eligible yet.
mhm.
But you got Fred Taylor and Steven Jackson, who each have over 11,000, as well as Corey Dillon and LaShawn McCoy. Well, LaShawn McCoy is also not eligible, but Corey Dillon and Warwick Dunn, Ricky Waters, Jamal Lewis, Thomas Jones, Tiki Barber, Eddie George, um, potentially Marshawn Lynch, Otis Anderson, and Ricky Williams. Those are, there's 31 players with over 10,000 rushing yards. And I mean, there's quite a few empty names that are not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame yet.
Yeah.
So
I mean, their time may come. It might not, but
the case
it's
remains to be seen.
it's the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Very Good. So,
And I think that's one thing that people I will say, to Cooperstown's credit,
mhm,
at least they don't force X amount of inductees per year.
yes.
If there is not somebody that we've had years where they didn't induct anybody, We've had years where they inducted just Barry Larkin, for example. You know,
And
like
look, like okay, you're gonna sing their praises. I'm gonna say one thing about Cooperstown. Rivera deserved to be unanimous voting, of course. I agree with that.
so did
The
Ken Griffey
people, the
Jr.
yeah, the people that will intentionally not vote for someone
Yeah, they can
because oh
piss off.
no, yeah, no one should get unanimous vote. Yeah, shut up.
Yeah, no.
Just
Those are the folks I can't stand. The writers who, for some reason, have petty look. If you don't think somebody's worthy of it because of what they did in baseball,
mhm.
that's fine. I get that. Now, if you don't think somebody deserves it because you have some petty reason, no.
Oh,
Then
it's their first year.
look. This is the thing. I guarantee you, if one person doesn't have Albert Pujols on the very first ballot that man is on, there is going to be probably hell to pay from the fans.
I don't. It's to be expected at this point that he's not going to get in unanimously because some beat writer, maybe the Cubs or hell, maybe even the Angels beat writer will be like, no, and it's stupid, it's silly.
Yeah. To me, this is my problem. And this is the last thing I'm going to say before we wrap it up. I could care less about the percentages because, newsflash, you're just as much a Hall of Famer at 75% as you
Hmm.
are at 100%. Just like the people in the Pro Football Hall, any Hall of Fame where they're like, well, they've been waiting this long, or, like, oh, he got in first ballot, but this guy waited 5 years. Guess what? You're just as much a Hall of Famer. I think it's terrible that some guys like Ken Stabler passed away before they got inducted and then just decided to induct him after. But in
The, the
other instances, you know,
the only time it ever matters is on your Wikipedia page because it says on there the percentage you got and what ballot you were, and it's like that's the only time anyone's ever going to know or care.
yeah. No, I'm not going to the to Cooperstown and I'm gonna say, hey, what was Lou Brock's percentage when he got inducted? Like,
Yeah.
think about it. Babe Ruth wasn't even unanimous. Willie Mays wasn't. Hank Aaron. But that doesn't mean they're not literally the greatest players of all time. Like,
It just tells you some of the idiocy of some sports writers.
yeah, you want
I
to talk
mean,
about
you
issues with
remember when
wrestling? I
Dan
got,
Lebatard's yeah,
oh
Dan
no.
Lebatard, who
Oh
I
no.
like, sold his ballad to Deadspin. It's
That
like
was
you're
terrible. I
making a
remember
mockery of it.
that.
No, man,
I remember that. The amount of backlash, amount of hell from that. With all that, folks, we're going to wrap it up
justifiably
here.
so.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up on Roundabout Sports this
Hey,
evening,
wait, hold
folks. I
on,
want
wait.
to.
Well,
Uh-oh.
before you go, I
Uh-oh.
got one more plug because it benefits all of us here on I-70 Sports Media. That is my Pro Wrestling Tea Store, the only place you can get Christopher Miles apparel. You can get Jared Shannon apparel. You can get IWW apparel. And you can get the official Interstate 70 Sports Media t-shirt all at prowrestlingtees.com/Christopher Miles. Check it out, guys. Support us.
There
Let's
it
go.
is. The support
Yeah.
local, folks. That's what we can ask. That's all we can ask for. Folks, once again, now Issues with Wrestling with Christopher Miles and Jared Shannon will be airing. Normally it airs on Thursday nights, but it will be airing on Friday night at what time?
6 o'clock. And of
That's what I
course,
thought.
guys, if you have blood questions, come join us, ask your questions. I'm sure Maestro's going to have some questions about blood and wrestling, but hey, let's
Oh,
talk about it.
I have some opinions,
Friday,
that's for damn
Friday
sure.
6 o'clock. Yeah,
All right, perfect. And be
Friday,
sure to
6 o'clock,
advertise us.
right here on the
Be,
WWE page.
Yep, and be sure to advertise with us at I-70 Sports Media with IWW. Roundabout Sports is on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Pocket Cast, and anywhere you get streaming and podcast availability. We are also on YouTube at Interstate 70 Sports Media. We're on Facebook on X. Roundabout Sports has its own separate YouTube page, as does Issues with Wrestling. And as always, folks, be sure to call the NAMI helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots mental health campaign dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle with mental health issues. And of course, we end our show with the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And for that, you dial 988. The line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. Understand that you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody who loves you, who cares about you, and who wants you to succeed in life. We were all given this amazing gift of being on this earth, and none of us know how long we're going to be here. So while we're here, let's make the most of every day while we can. And don't ever be ashamed if you're having a bad day. It is okay to not be okay. Just know that there are avenues and there are ways to get help through tough times. And for once again, the number is 988. And you could also be the listening ears and watchful eyes for somebody in need. I want to thank Christopher Miles once again for joining me, a dear friend. And folks, I'm the maestro Jeremy Karp. And remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.